Hey, welcome back. This is Asfar Basunia, and I'm a final year medical student who just matched at the University of Pennsylvania for diagnostic radiology. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, virtual residency interviews were implemented for the first time in the 2020-2021 academic year. Importantly, there were many unforeseen challenges on the side of both the programs and the applicants. In this video, I'm going to talk about my complete virtual residency interview experience and share with you what I learned as I moved through the process. First, let's talk about scheduling. I used Google Calendar connected to my ARIS Gmail account to keep track of my interviews. It was always open and ready in my browser, even during interviews. I also had a physical calendar that I updated nightly for my significant other. Oh yeah, you should preferably recruit some help to schedule interviews. Why? Because you may get interviews while you are in a busy rotation, while you are actually interviewing for another program, or simply when you're not near your phone or computer. Sometimes I actually scheduled interviews during a program director's introductory remarks, noon conference, or break times while interviewing at other programs. Having an up-to-date and always open Google Calendar allowed for this. There are 3 scheduling applications that programs will primarily use: the ARIS Scheduler, Interview Broker, or Thalamus. In the ARIS Scheduler, you click on the invitation and you select a date and time that works for you. For Interview Broker, once you click on the link, just select the date that works for you. Sometimes you'll have AM or PM sessions as well. For Thalamus, select the time from the calendar interface. For some programs, the program coordinator will send you an email with the available times and you schedule by emailing back your preferred dates. Very, very rarely, you may have to call the program coordinator or the secretary to schedule an interview. If you find such a program, do yourself the favor and drop the interview. If you can, it is truly not worth the headache and the stress. I personally would not recommend scheduling your top or reach interviews towards the beginning or at the very end of the interview cycle. Schedule interviews with programs that you think will fit in the middle of your rank list first. This is good for building confidence. I interviewed at Penn at the very beginning of the interview cycle and admittedly gave some very awkward responses. However, my enthusiasm for the program was palpable, which is also an important consideration. Interview fatigue is real and will set in towards the end of the interview season. Once you accept a program's interview invitation, you may be sent more documents, such as further program information, sample residence schedules, sample contract, etc. You may also receive a form attesting that you received the sample contract or you will not record the interview session. Make sure to sign and send back these forms within the same day so that you don't forget later on. Now, let's talk about the interview setup. The 3 most important things for your interview day are the lighting, the background, and your internet connection. For lighting, it is important to ensure that you have adequate light in your background. I used a ring light that my wife had and an outdoor floodlight with a plain piece of white paper as a damper. Any light source should be placed behind the camera, not behind you. Similarly, if you have windows permitting natural light into the room, make sure that the windows are behind the camera and not behind you. Your internet connection should be strong, but have your cell phone with you and be ready to hotspot just in case your Wi-Fi signal dies. I actually had to hotspot 2 entire interviews because my Wi-Fi connection was spotty. Don't forget to set your phone to silent. You don't need any fancy camera, and your computer's camera should suffice for the interviews. Height of the camera should be adjusted to about your head level so that you're not looking down at the camera. To achieve this height level, prop up your computer using textbooks, or in my case, a plastic basket. It is okay to wear headphones. If you're not wearing headphones, make sure to turn off the alerts in your computer. For the on-camera physical setting, find a quiet place with no pets and no babies. Positioning against a wall or a plain background is completely fine. In general, the background should be neat and tidy. Some tasteful decorations concordant with your hobbies or interests may be used to your advantage, such as musical instruments or your drawings. However, do not display cringeworthy stuff, like my nameplate behind me. Remember, your fellow applicants and your future colleagues will be seeing your background during general sessions. If you are confused whether something appears cringy, run it by your trusted friends. Or if you're simply in doubt, just don't do it. My dress up was professional with an unbuttoned suit, a tie, and a button-down shirt that I left untucked. I wore comfortable track pants or pajamas with slippers since my bottom half did not appear in the videos. For the off-camera physical setting, I hung posters on the wall where I wrote down common questions by specialty and by attending or resident appropriateness. I also had a notepad nearby to take notes during the interview. Make sure to write down the contact information of the program coordinator in case you need to get in touch with them for emergencies such as a computer crash or an internet outage. I also had water, snacks, and refreshments accessible and within reach but out of view of the camera. To prepare for interviews, definitely check out the AMSER guide as well as Yasha and Sam's YouTube channels where they have excellent videos on radiology interview prep. I am going to break down the questions you may get during interviews into a few general categories. First category is knowing yourself. Most frequently asked questions include, tell me about yourself, and why radiology? I had the same answer for both, and it came straight from the second paragraph of my personal statement. Link to that video in the description below. Part of knowing yourself also encompasses what you included in your ARIS CV, such as your hobbies, your research, specifically in your specialty, your strengths, your weaknesses, your personal hero or your role model, your favorite movies, songs, or books. Second, know answers to common behavioral questions, such as, tell me about a time you failed, a difficult clinical scenario, a time when you disagreed with the team, a time when you took an initiative far beyond your level. Third general category is knowing your specialty. Not just why this specialty, but alternatives to this specialty. So for instance, if you couldn't do radiology, what would you have gone into? Any alternatives to medical school? Describe your ideal colleague. What challenges do you anticipate in this specialty? Fourth, know the specific program. Research the program's website and look into the program's Instagram or Twitter accounts. Why this program? Why this city? During residency, if you want to focus on a topic of research, global health, medical education, business, see how the faculty are involved. And lastly, practice. Practice in front of a mirror, with a friend, or in your medical school if they offer resources. Now, let's talk about the resident meet and greet. In my opinion, the resident meet and greet sessions are more important than the actual interview itself in terms of getting to know the ins and outs of a program. The resident meet and greets can happen most typically the night before the interview, during the actual interview session itself, a fixed time during the interview season, or after the interview season has concluded. Questions you should ask and get clarified from the radiology residents may broadly involve a few categories. First, the daily work life. What does a typical workday look like? order and structure of rotations, research opportunities, procedural experiences. When does a resident start reading advanced modalities such as the MRI? Didactic structure and if didactics are protected times. And finally, virtual versus face-to-face readouts. Second, questions on call and night float, which may include the general call structure and breakdown of call by resident years, independent call versus 24/7 attending supervision, any travel involved between sites, and most importantly, if ultrasound technologies are available during call. Third, questions on benefits, such as moonlighting, type of moonlighting available, such as contrast coverage versus reading scans, compensation breakdown, and availability, such as plenty of shifts for all residency years or only available to senior residents. Don't forget about the fringe benefits, which are just as important and can affect the quality of life during training, such as parking. Is it free or do residents have to pay a fixed amount per month? Health insurance costs, living situation, which includes cost of living of the surrounding area where most residents live, the rent nearby, vibe and culture of the city, as well as any wellness events arranged by the program itself. Most importantly, always ask about a program's weaknesses and how the program leadership is addressing them. Seek concrete information on this, such as the last change made by the program from residents, direct feedback, or something that made the residents pleasantly surprised when they arrived at the program. For preliminary IM or transitional years, questions on rotation and call structure, scut work such as drawing blood or transporting patients if you're looking into programs in the New York City area, getting time off at the end to facilitate moving, and other benefits such as UWorld or Step 3 reimbursement, health insurance costs, parking situation, and cost of living around the area. Be wary of asking pointed questions to residents during the interview itself, as you are being evaluated and the program coordinator may be within an earshot of the residents. Happy hour outside of the interview session itself are far better for assessing the vibe and asking frank questions. If the program you are interviewing at does not offer this, get the contact information of current residents from the program coordinator and get in touch with them outside of the interview session. Moving on to the actual interview itself. Remember to be positive, smile a lot, and do not complain. People like positive people. The logistics of the interview day will vary from program to program. Typically, you will have interviews with the program's leadership, faculty, chief, or current residents. Each interview lasts between 10 and 30 minutes. Again, common questions include, tell me about yourself, why radiology, why this program, tell me about your hobbies. Oh, I see you did research or volunteering in X, tell me about that. Do you have questions for me is the most frequently asked question you will get during your interviews. I personally did not ask different questions to different interviewers. I asked the same questions to all of my interviewers because most of my questions were opinion-based. That reminds me, your questions can be subdivided into two types. First are the factual questions that residents may not know the answer to, such as funding for research and attending conferences, any major anticipated changes coming to the program, and the last change made by the program as a direct result of resident feedback. Try not to ask about the mission and vision of the program. It is very trite at this point. Opinion-based questions is what I would recommend you focus on, such as, what makes a good resident? How do you best utilize your PGY 1 year? I see you're doing research on X, or I see you moved from this city. Tell me about your experience. And my personal favorite, taken directly from Sam's video, what differentiates a good resident from a great resident? Take notes during the interview, which can include answers to your questions or new information you encountered during the program director's presentation. Now, I actually looked away to take notes while my interviewers were answering questions, and it was fine. A brief note on illegal questions. They didn't happen often during my interviews, and they were usually from older interviewers with benign intentions. One question I got was, where else did I apply? To which I answered, I applied all over. Another question I got was, where else have I interviewed? To which I responded, I am very grateful and fortunate to have a good number of interviews. The last topic I want to touch upon is post-interview. Immediately after my interviews, I would consolidate my notes. I used an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of both the factual information and my gut feeling. I don't recommend having a personal point-based system as it may be a bit overblown. I also sent personalized thank you notes within 24 hours to each of my interviewers at my top 10 programs based on the responses of my interviewers to the opinion-based questions. Note that you don't have to and are not expected to send thank you notes. I will address pre- and post-interview communication, including letters of interest, thank you notes, and a letter of intent in a future video. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Stay well and see you next time.